Hi, this is Michael Cohen. I'm a Dallas elder law and estate planning attorney, and I'm joined by my good friend Don Crawford Jr., who we have a radio show on for years. And so he so graciously allowed us to continue those meetings that we had before that used to be at the radio station, but
Right.
now we do it by Zoom, and I'll
Zoom.
have a YouTube podcast.
Yeah, I'm in my
Um,
hotel in Rochester, New York. Go figure, Mike. But I wouldn't want to miss these calls and these announcements that you're making. So thank you for appreciating that I'm a part of it and including me.
Well, thank you from Rochester to Dallas and to around whoever who's listening here. I appreciate your
Mhm.
participating because I
Sure.
know you, particularly on this first topic, because I know you go to Park City, Utah all the
I do.
time.
Going next
And
Tuesday. Hmm.
there you go.
Hmm.
Well, Park City, Utah is the site of a infamous situation. For those who may recall, Kouri Richins was the wife who murdered her husband with a Moscow mule, giving 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. And yes, and so uh, the trial just happened this year. She was convicted of aggravated murder. And we call this Murder She Wrote because after she murdered her husband, she wrote a child's book using his likeness as have how to deal with grieving for children. All the while, she was the one who was, at least the jury took less than 3 hours, determined she was guilty. And now on May 13th of this year, so stay tuned. This was being recorded just a couple days before that.
Right.
So if you want to know on what ended up happening as far as her sentencing, we'll know that. And you can see that in my newsletter article is coming out later in May. It'll either be 25 years to life imprisonment. We'll see what the judge says. And
Either way, I wouldn't want to be her right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't either. Just to, you might say, well, what happened? Well, she forged his power of attorney. She withdrew money from his account. She tried to change a life insurance policy into her name. She, on her cell phone, there was very incriminating evidence about she had her marriage was shaky and she had a paramour at the time. And she was saying, "Will you marry? Are you going to marry me if something happens to my husband?" She had on the phone said, "What's the lethal dose of fentanyl?" And she gave him 5 times the limit. They said, "If someone poisoned, what's going to show up on it's poisoned somebody? What's going to show up on the death certificate?" Um, and if you have a death certificate still pending, uh, where will the life insurance company go? And I'm going to tell you a story about that in just a second. And then can the cops force you to take a lie detector test? And what are the luxury prisons in the United States and for the rich and
Right.
famous,
Right.
or maybe infamous? And then how do you delete all the things I just wrote from a
Yeah.
self, So she had all these things. So there's all this circumstantial evidence.
Mhm.
By the way, I'm just going to divert for a minute because I remember, I don't know if you remember this, we talked about this on the radio years ago. I had a case once where the husband was disabled and would always fall out of bed. And so they put rails on the
Mhm.
bed
I remember.
and everything was in the husband's name, the life insurance, that's what reminds me, and a retirement account. And unfortunately, there was only just a joint checking account that had a nominal amount, and the wife depended fully upon the husband. Well, unfortunately, he rolled in bed and got his head stuck in the bars and choked and died. And so to collect on the insurance, you need a death certificate. Well, they weren't going to issue that very quickly because this is circumstance. I mean, this looks like how did this happen? Because you're not going to be a beneficiary if you kill somebody.
Right.
That's called the Slater statute. And so on life insurance or perhaps the retirement accounts. Well, we had to get her to, we didn't want to have to wait to probate a will. You know, when you have a life insurance policy or a beneficiary designation, often you don't have to wait. You just show the death certificate. But we couldn't get a death certificate when there's uh, unusual circumstances like that. How did we get, somehow, we get her to be able to live? I got a temporary death certificate. Now, yes, you're temporarily dead. Uh,
Okay.
I hadn't didn't know there was such a thing as a temporary death certificate, but we're looking for ways out so she can live. And we found out that from going from one spot to the other, there was such a thing so she could collect and continue to live. Well, that didn't happen in this case. The life insurance did go uh, to the family. He had children as opposed to the murdering spouse, uh,
Okay.
and under Utah law, and but there was other problems like on the home. It still hasn't been determined because originally he had a prenuptial agreement where the home and the business was going to go to his wife. However, um, you know, he he was suspicious that he might be murdered by her prior to the actual murder. He was very sick on a previous trip, and he told his sister, he said, "I really don't know what's going on here. We have a kind of a shaky marriage, and I don't know.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I go on this trip and I'm really sick, and so I'm changing without her knowledge. I'm going to create a living trust, a revocable living trust, and put my home and business in the trust. So so it'll go to my family as opposed to her because I don't trust her anymore.
Smart.
Now she's saying, well, you did that without me knowing. She's suing the estate. You did that without me knowing. So I should be entitled to that money. And so you're unjustly being enriched. And now they're suing, countersuing for 13 million. I think that the criminal conviction is going to weigh pretty heavily against her. Uh,
Yes.
so, so right now it still hasn't been determined on some of those things are basically held in trust in effect until there's been the final determinations. But you really, most of the time, you don't, most states have slayer statutes and you don't benefit for killing somebody.
No, I don't think she's benefited. We know he didn't. I don't think anybody's benefited. She even took, I think, some of the money too. And didn't she build a mansion or something
Yeah,
like that?
well, first she had a kind of a failing real estate business. And so she was putting money into her accounts.
Okay.
She withdrew, she borrowed against his credit, 250,000. And like I said, withdrew, forged a power of attorney, tried to forge a life insurance beneficiary. So she did one thing after another. Now the defense said, well, we didn't see, you don't have any proof that she actually did it. It was just circumstantial evidence. So, to convict somebody, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
I
So it's a
see.
very high standard. But the jury looked at the facts and they said, look, two and two equal four. And so it didn't take them long to determine with all those things that
Yeah.
this person was um, up to, didn't have some good thoughts in her mind.
No, I don't think that. I do wonder what her defense attorney is going to claim before the sentencing to allow her to speak, to defend herself or not, depending upon what she decides to say. But I'm pretty sure I know where the judge is leaning. That is probably life in prison. You can't
Could
kill
be.
somebody
Well, we'll see what the final thing is. I guess there's one good thing about that. It's free room and board, but
if we room and board. That's the only good thing
but
about that.
and you don't have to worry about what you're wearing. I mean, it's got
No,
your attire. They probably
that's,
have it all set.
that's for
Just
sure.
I wonder if, today's color is orange. I'm not really sure.
Right. Yeah. Um, you probably, I hope, Mike hopes that no one here that's listening to this call ever gets in a situation like Kouri Richins, because it's not good. But your situations individually it needs attention, it needs work, and you need the guidance, the expert guidance that Mike Cohen can provide you. So you should attend his next workshop, and that is coming up, Mike, is all we know at this point, right? We don't have an exact date.
Well, we have them every month, and
Okay.
so by the time somebody listens to this podcast, it may be a different date. So,
Okay.
just if somebody's interested in going to the free estate planning essentials and the elder law planning workshop, all you have to do is call 214-720-0102 or sign up online at dallaselderlawyer.com, dallaselderlawyer.com. They're
Mhm.
free. They're 2 hours. You learn something. I always ask people what they want to know. Nobody's ever asked me, hey, if I slay my husband, can I benefit? No one's ever asked me that question in all
Right.
the years. But they do ask about, well, what about beneficiary designations? And then they'll ask, wills, trust, basic questions. And you never know what somebody's going to ask because every situation is different. So,
And they're always in person too. They're not
uh
via Zoom or any kind of other virtual
Yeah,
Zoom
you,
call,
you you get more of a feel. You get to see more of the questions of everybody else, and so you learn more if you're in person.
right? Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that education very much, and we'll see what happens later on this week.
We'll see. Well, if you're interested in the outcome and you didn't hear it in the newspaper, then just look at our newsletter, which is on our website, which is dallaselderlawyer.com, which is the same place where you could sign up if you want to attend the free estate planning essentials workshop. By the way, if you do go to the free estate planning essentials workshop, we also give you what I call a free 1 hour vision meeting with me to go over your own situation. So it's 3 free hours of legal education without any obligation or cost. Well, thank you, Don.
Thank you, Mike.